Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Hi, everyone. Today, my guest is David George Brooke, that gratitude guy. And today, we'll be talking about gratitude and how it can change your life. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Steve. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I remember when you and I first connected, I said, I love this guy. I said, so it was just a natural. And you said, you want to be in the podcast? Absolutely. So I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So talk to me about your story. And I know I've heard it, but our listeners haven't. So how did you get to be that gratitude guy?
Sure. Well, thank you. And all of us, I've been around 7+ decades, so it's a little bit long. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it. But essentially, when I was 19, I was giving a talk at a high school, and a teacher had asked me to come back and speak about being successful in business. And I was a freshman at the University of Washington here in Seattle. And I went and got in my car and I thought, that's what I want to be as a speaker someday. And 44 years later, at the ripe old age of 63, about 10 years ago, I finally decided to quit my job. I was managing a Lowe's home improvement store and decided to become a speaker. And so it had been always on the back of my mind, but as so many things happen in life, other things happen and you just never quite, quote unquote, get around to it. But along the way, I'd had a lot of, I know we all have this roller coaster ride called life, and there's all sorts of ups and downs, and the ups are fun. The downs aren't fun. Everybody wants to be up again when they're down, but the downs is where you learn things. And I'd had some experiences in life where my two good friends in high school were killed, a couple of more friends in Vietnam. My mother passed away. My father took his own life. Later, I got married and my wife passed away when my sons were 4 and 14. So there was a lot of loss and a lot of things, just traumatic things that happened. And I remember thinking, I'm going to need to get a coping mechanism for some of these things along the way. And a buddy of mine, who's a very good friend, one day says to me, have you ever heard of a gratitude journal? And I said, no, what's that? Well, it's a journal you write in every single day of what you're grateful for. And it's just like, I'll talk about mine in a minute, but it's like 4 or 5 minutes. And it just totally changed my life. And so once I decided to become a speaker, I wasn't really sure what I was going to speak about. I just wanted to be a quote unquote motivational speaker. And there were topics like leadership and time management and time-life balance and things like that. But I thought I kind of like this gratitude thing. So I started talking about gratitude and would go to Rotary clubs and chambers and Lions. And I did a prison and schools and high schools and just different things, hospitals, and would do my talk. And so along the way, I remember once I was doing a talk and a guy points at me and he says, I've heard of you before. You're that gratitude guy. And so I thought, wait a second, there's my brand. I think that's what I'll become. I'll become that gratitude guy. So I later got it trademarked and everything and started kind of moving towards that. But it's been a absolute labor of love. And we've heard this for years about if you love what you do, you never work another day in your life. And that's how I feel now at 73, where I've been doing this for about the 10 years. And I think it always kind of makes me emotional. But I think one of the things that I get as a takeaway is every week, once or twice or 3 times, be it whether it's my YouTube videos, my speeches I do, or talks or workshops, somebody tells me that you changed my life. And I never got that working for Nordstrom as a store manager or working for Lowe's. And it's just the most thrilling thing to, as I said, I take it very personally, and just like, it's just, how did I get so fortunate to have the courage to leave all those careers and go become the speaker? And now people tell me I changed their life. So it was just an incredible journey. And I talk about people like Colonel Sanders was 63 when he started KFC. So you're never too old. You're never too old to get out there and do what you love. And so I love what I do, and it's been very impactful, and I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, that's great. Gratitude is an amazing thing. I have a gratitude practice as well. And I'd love to have you share what is it that you recommend that people do to get started working on gratitude?
Sure. And as I mentioned too, it's kind of the centerpiece of my talk and my workshops and everything, but is the actual gratitude journal. And the reason why it's so important is the brain and how we plant things in our brain. And there's this is called, the one that I do is called That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. And there's a little saying in the second or third page that says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And so there's something. I am so grateful to Steve for inviting me to the Prophet podcast and so forth, that plants it in your brain. And so it's so important. And so I tell people that want to get started, they go, well, how long does it take? And I said, well, it takes about 5 minutes. And actually, I might as well just give you a quick little preview of it. This has got a little template to it. So it's all easy to fill in the blanks and day and date. And then there's a thing called the daily number. And then a couple of lines here for current events, special occasions. So you don't need a diary. And then there's 4 or 5 lines that cues you up. I am grateful for, so you're kind of ready to go. And then 2 little lines here that say the highlight of your day. So you focus on what's the best thing that happened to you maybe yesterday, if you write it in the morning like I do. And then there's a little quote, some gratitude quote, a different one for each day. And then on the right-hand side is gratitude tomorrow. And that's what you're grateful for that hasn't even happened yet. So you can kind of pre-program your subconscious mind, which is in your prefrontal cortex, to kind of think about where you want to be and what you're going to be grateful for. So it makes a big difference. And as you said, how to get started. One of the things that I often will end up with is when people say, well, I just don't know if I have the time. And I go, well, then do this. Then just try writing 1 word every day and see how you feel after a week. Just one thing you're grateful for. And then when you do that, then try writing a sentence, and then maybe 2 sentences or 3 things you're grateful for, and try it for a week and see what a difference it can make. And in so many cases, they will expand that out to then writing in the journal and taking that 4 or 5 minutes. And it's so often for me as part of this power hour I like to do in the morning, with getting up and drinking a quart of water, making my bed, taking a shower, do my stretching, do my meditation, writing the gratitude journal, then turn on the electronic devices. My favorite one of that whole morning is the gratitude journal, because you're so focused on all these blessings and abundance that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that anticipation of tomorrow's wins.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love the tiny habit thing. I don't,
Yeah.
are you familiar with the book, The Tiny Habits
Yes,
by
I read.
Tiny Habit by BJ Fogg?
Yes, I
Yeah.
read that book. That was cool.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you suggested there. If it's, just, pick up the pen and write a word, right?
Yeah.
Or what I did when I started doing the journaling in the evening was I just required myself to write today's date in.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
No
That's
more.
perfect.
Just write today's date. No more. That's all you have to do. Now, of course, once I got the pen in my hand, it's pretty easy to go ahead and write down the 3 things that I'm thankful for, right?
Exactly.
And again, it's 1 word, 2 words, maybe it's one thing that just reminds you of the thing that happened. But that change of mindset around, and knowing that I'm going to have to write those things down at the end of the day, makes me notice things that I'm grateful for throughout the day.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts forming a bigger and bigger habit.
And I do something, Steve, that it actually quantifies it. I sort of glossed over it, but this little daily number is right up here. It's written right here, and it's written again at the very bottom on the lower right-hand corner. And the daily number is where you're kind of taking your temperature. 10 is the best day of your life. And it talks about it in the first couple of pages when it tells you how to write. 10 is the highest and 1 is the lowest. And so I'll notice I might wake up and maybe I'm an 8. And so I'm feeling, but then I start writing about my health and my 2 sons and all the blessings. And the fact that I got a nice warm hot shower this morning and a warm bed, or whatever it might be that hits me. And then the number at the bottom is always higher, because I've again focused on everything, and it just gives it back to the forefront of your mind.
Well, and it harkens back to the days of, when we lived in caves as a species, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were so predispositioned to look for the negative, right? That's how we survived.
Right.
And so our brains are really built to emphasize the negative, because 99 times out of 100, that rustling in the bushes is not a tiger.
Yeah.
But the one time it is, you better know it.
Yeah.
Right. You better be prepared for it to be. So we're so focused on the negative. And by putting this gratitude practice in, it helps us to think about the things that we are that are positive, that are going on in our life all the time.
Well, and I think it's a great point because I think we're predisposed to negativity.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, we're all born and we all die. So that's kind of a negative thing at the end. And I'm so fascinated because you look at our parents, you look at your parents and how we're kind of passed on. My father was the most negative. He took his own life, but he's the most negative guy I ever met. And I'm one of your more positive people. And I'd go, "Good morning, Dad." He'd go, "What's good about it?" And I go, "Who thinks that way?" But it's such a positive way. And I think another thing too, that again, trying to be fair and not thinking that Steve and Dave or anybody else are somebody special. But I contend if Steve and David go over to the sidewalk and ask 10 people, we're going to start Dave and Steve's cookies because we know how to make chocolate chip cookies. 9 out of 10 people will tell you what's wrong with it. Don't you know businesses fail? You're never going to compete with the cookies at such and such a start. Why are people so programmed to negative? I think it's interesting.
Well, I really think that it's because of our survival instincts before we became, well, I'll call it civilized, before we lived in villages with a bunch of other people, right? When we lived in a little tribe in a cave, and you had to be extra attentive for the negative stuff because the negative stuff could kill you.
Exactly.
The problem is our bodies haven't really adjusted to the fact that the negative stuff today, in general, the negative stuff won't kill you.
Yes, exactly.
But our body still reacts the same way, that all of those hormones and the emotions, all of that stuff that triggers it, that's genetically programmed from, tens of thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So,
and I think I call it such a healthy coping mechanism in a day and age of so many destructive and deadly ones. My wife, unfortunately, passed away from a prescription pill overdose. And we know about the fentanyl crisis and all this mental health crisis that we're around. And so I say, this is something that can change your state of mind just by writing in it for 4 or 5 or 6 minutes. You don't have to take a pill. You don't have to inhale anything. And so I've softened up on a little bit of, in a way, for the people that have gone to some of these destructive methods, because I think to myself, they're just trying to get out of pain. But this is a coping mechanism that's really healthy. So that's how I look at that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. Combating depression and anxiety. What's the role of gratitude in that? How have you found that with the people that you've talked to and worked with?
Well, it's interesting. I'm actually going to read this, but I'll read it kind of fast. But there's been a lot of research that's been done on gratitude, so it's not just some woo-woo science.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And it's very true. But and as I said, I'm going to read this kind of quickly. But I love this, and this is some of the research and some of the studies that I found out about. Appreciating what we have measurably improves our relationships, our life satisfaction, our health, our sleep, and it improves our physical health, leading to fewer aches and pains, lower blood pressure, and less depression and anxiety, just what we're talking about. Grateful people are more likely to take care of their health, exercise more often, and schedule regular checkups. Gratitude reduces toxic emotions. I thought this was really interesting, like envy, resentment, frustration, anger, and aggression, and enhances positive emotions like empathy, caring, and sympathy. Too much of our time is spent pursuing things we currently don't have. I love this. One of my sayings is gratitude turns what you have into enough. So important. Quit trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's like a cat chasing its tail. It's crazy. Gratitude reverses that and realigns our priorities to appreciate what we currently have. Happiness is rarely constant. So although happiness is a fantastic goal, gratitude for the tools that got you there are more important. So, and it's interesting how easily we can lose sight of everything we have to be thankful for. And I think back about COVID and everything we went through for those 2 years, and it was easy to feel pretty sorry for ourselves, our houses and condos and all that kind of thing. But still, we had many blessings that we really appreciate.
Right. I mean, and those of us who survived, I know we lost a lot of people, but there've been some blessings that have come out of this.
Yes.
I think about the number of people who have found freedom to do the kinds of things that they really want to do. You maybe you didn't lose your job, but you had to work from home.
Yeah,
well, you got to work from home. Yeah. You didn't have to spend a half an hour, 45 minutes commuting each way to work, right?
So true.
And then when companies asked that they come back, people said, I kind of like working from home.
Exactly. Oh gosh, some of the silver linings are just amazing. Sort of post-pandemic and post-pandemic. I have a friend of mine who's a videographer, and so he comes and videos my talks at the hotels and things like this. But he lives in town, but he's about an hour away. And so he always does it for about half it would cost me the price. So I feel I should drive to his Starbucks. So I would drive an hour to his Starbucks, spend an hour with him, and drive an hour back. Now, 1 hour on Zoom, I have my coffee, and I have 2 hours I never got in.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the other thing, if you think about it, my daughter lives in New York City, and she is grateful for the fact that she can now wear a mask on mass transit.
Oh, yes.
And not get hit on by every guy because they
I
don't know
never
what
thought
she
about
looks
that.
like.
That's a great point.
Right.
Wow. I never thought about that.
So, because she's pretty.
Yeah.
And so by covering up most of her face,
Yeah.
That doesn't happen as often, right?
Point.
It's little things like that. Or the fact that we now have permission to not go someplace when we're not feeling well.
Yes. Yes.
We used to just slog through it. And now you say, I'm really not feeling well today. I think I better stay home. I better take care of myself. We've given ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. So there are silver linings. There are gifts in everything, even something as bad as the pandemic was. And certainly for many people, it was horrible. Lots of people lost their lives.
Yes, exactly.
But I want to go back now to your practice of listing 3 gratitudes in the past and 3 gratitudes in the future, like tomorrow, right? I actually do this. This is my evening gratitude practice.
Really
I do 3 wins from today.
Yes, perfect.
And 3 wins for tomorrow.
Excellent.
And the thing that I've discovered, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, the thing that I've discovered is, when I get to the end of tomorrow, those 3 wins that I predicted almost always come true.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Because that's such a great testimonial to that. And I think, and that's a pretty quick turnaround, Steve. I'll give you one of my examples that I've used for mine is in I call it my gratitude intentions, gratitude tomorrow. And I started out writing, way back when I started, I'm so grateful for speaking to 100 people. And then I spoke to 100 people, and then 1,000. And then I spoke to 5,000. Then I'm grateful to 10,000. I spoke to 10,000 soldiers down at Joint Base Lewis McChord, our military base.
Wow.
5,000 at 10 o'clock and 5,000 at 2 p.m. And then later 100,000. And then one of my videos on YouTube got 100,000. Then I said 1 million. And now I've got over 1 million views on my videos on YouTube, because I've been doing it for a long time and have over 2,000 videos. But it just programmed that blank brain. And that was over time. But it's the same thing, just like for you're manifesting what's going to happen tomorrow. And as you said, that shows that 9 out of 10 times or whatever that's working, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it really, it's kind of amazing that, I'm writing down, and they're not big wins.
Right.
That's just not like I'm going to get $1 million tomorrow, or I'm going to, I'm grateful for the meeting that I'm going to have with this person and the connection that we'll have. I wrote down yesterday that I was grateful for the podcasts that I was going to have today. Right.
Yeah.
And tonight, when I write down what I'm grateful for from what happened in the last 24 hours, those podcasts are going to be in there.
Right.
So I'm pre-programming my brain to think about the wins that I'm going to have tomorrow.
And think about too, the convenience back to, we talked about the hour. I used to go to Scott's house, and now I used to go to the grocery store. Now, knock, knock, knock. It's Amazon Fresh about every 4 or 5 days. And there's 3 bags. I open the door. There's the bags. I don't have to drive. I don't have to get a shopping cart. I don't have to go inside. I mean, it's so interesting. But just think about how that's kind of programmed to get those things that you wanted. And I just think that those are just perfect examples of where, if you really think about it, it'll happen. And again, pandemic. And I think of just one of the ones, and I won't get carried away, but Zoom. I have a map in the United States with these little arrows that shows all the places I've spoken in person. I remember the very first place was San Antonio, Texas, and I live in Seattle. And I got a little arrow right there. Yay, somebody's paying me to fly across the country and give my talk, and so on. But now I have all these blue ones in my world map, and those are all because of Zoom. So I've spoken, haven't been there in person, in Australia and France and Italy and Greece and all these places, but by Zoom.
Yeah.
So who knew that this was going to change it so much? And it feels like you and I are sitting across from each other at Starbucks, talking, and just what a podcast became. And I do this walk every day. I take a 2-hour walk, and I really want to keep in shape, but I always listen to a podcast or an audible book. And that 2-hour walk feels like 45 minutes. So think of what podcasts is we're doing today. Think about what that's done for people to feed their minds with all this good information.
Yeah, no, it's great. So talk a little bit about, we're both technically senior citizens.
Yes,
unfortunately. So talk about the power of gratitude for seniors, for
I think
those of us who are of an advanced age.
Yes, I remember when I first met you. Yay, somebody close to my age. But I think that it's interesting because let's face it, when you are a senior, you're on the downward path, or like
not me, man.
Yeah, I'm fine with older. Just don't say old. Say older's fine, but don't say OLD. And so you have less mobility, you have less physical capabilities, you have a lot of things. These things diminish over time, our mental and physical abilities, if you will. And so to me, it's maybe even more important to focus on gratitude, because again, what is gratitude doing? It's helping you to focus on your blessings and abundance, all the things you have, and who cares about the things you don't have? I do a little exercise where these people fill out things on a card, and they describe another person, sort of their characteristics, and it's how I see Steve, and energetic and driven and smart, and so forth. And this guy comes up to the book table and he goes, "How come you don't have people write down their shortcomings?" So what does this look like? Negative Nelly with Dave? I said, we're focusing on the positive things. So when you think about it as a senior, those things are tailing off. And it's interesting. I'm on a couple of boards with these senior centers, and I go and do my board meetings, and I see the people, and yes, they are slower, and they don't talk as fast, and they move as slowly, and so on. So maybe that's the most important time of ever to remember I can still talk, I can still see, I can still hear, I can still communicate with other people, which is so important, because as we get older, one of the biggest things that I think is so important is community. Keeping that community strong.
Well, and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, you've learned an awful lot of stuff in your 70 years and in my 60 something years, we've learned a lot, and having the ability to continue to share it.
Exactly.
And having and I don't know about you, but I'd much rather listen to somebody who's happy and grateful for what they have, rather than the old curmudgeon who is just grousing about all the stuff that he or she doesn't have.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because I thought about that too. I never wanted to be that person as they got older. With all due respect to whoever I'm talking about here, all they do is list all their ailments. Oh, Steve, I haven't seen you. We call
it an organ recital. This organ hurts, that organ hurts.
Oh, I got to write that down. I never heard that before. That's hilarious. An organ recital, because that's what it is. Oh, I haven't even told you about my liver. Here's the latest thing that's going, and you just go, oh my gosh. And so, and plus, I try not to be sarcastic, but nobody wants to hear it. They want to hear what's happy, what's going on. They want you to ask them about how they're doing and what are the latest things that happened with them and stuff. So, but there's something about it that I've overheard conversations wherever I was, in coffee shop or whatever, and the people, they're just organ recital. That's hilarious. I mean, because they're just going right down the list. It's like nobody wants to hear it.
This hurts, that hurts, the other thing, right? Doesn't work, it's all that, right?
That's so funny.
So. Yeah, the other thing that you talked about, which I really like, is this, again, thinking about the future, and my practice for the morning. And I don't know if you've had any experience with this. So I bookend my day with gratitude. I do a gratitude practice in the morning and a gratitude practice, or I say it's really wins, right? When my wins for the day and my wins for tomorrow. But when I get up in the morning, the gratitude practice that I have, I do a gratitude for the past.
Yes.
A gratitude for the present.
Nice.
And a gratitude for the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And an anticipatory gratitude. Now, those anticipatory gratitudes tend to be further out. Maybe it's the opportunities for the week, or the new year that's coming, or, it might be, some event that I'm anticipating, or the fact that my girls are coming home for the holidays, or, something like that. But I find that it's really interesting to think about. And the other thing that I have read in my study of gratitude is that the way to put it out there is to think about how you're going to feel when that thing that you're grateful for in the future happens.
Yes. So true. So true. So true. And I have to say that I'm very proud of you. I don't know if we talked about it in earlier conversations, but for you to do the past, the present, and the future, I hate to say it, but you're probably kind of in the minority. The people that I talk about, well, I just don't have the time, Dave. I'm just too busy for this. And I go, really? You're too busy to focus on what you're grateful for just 5 minutes? 5 minutes?
Really?
That's it? It's less than 8-minute abs. I mean, what the heck? I mean, that shouldn't take long. And so I think, and I guess the biggest testimonial that I can say is that daily number before and after. It's double negative. It's not never, I guess that's what I'm saying. It's never not gone up. That's what I wanted to say. There's the double negative. And I'll usually start my day at 8, 9. And after I write that 5 minutes, it's a 9 to 9.5. And then sometimes it's a 10 if it involves one of my 2 sons and things like that just have happened where I'm just never been in a better mood. And it's interesting too, to also sort of quantify that number some more. When I walk off the stage, and about half the time I get a standing ovation, which makes me want to start crying because I just can't believe I'm so fortunate, but I'm always a 10. Every time I walk to my book table, I'm just always a 10. And it's just the greatest. And another thing, you said something that made me think of it. When I go to the book table, I sell the gratitude journals and I sign them and they take pictures and so forth. But to your point, you're doing the best thing you can do, which is setting a great example. And I feel managing employees and raising kids, the number one skill is you have to set a great example. So you're writing yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And people say, well, I'm going to buy 4 or 5 of these for all my kids. And I go, well, okay, thank you. I'm glad I'm selling 5 journals, but you need to set a good example. The only way they're going to write them is they see you writing it every day, because that's what we do. What people do, we don't do what they necessarily say, but there's something about it. I say, just make the time. That's why I like just the one word and see how you feel. And then one sentence and see what happens. And you'll see a big difference.
If 5 minutes seems too long, spend a minute.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I love your thing about just starting with the date. I mean, that's the whole key, is to get the brain programmed. So I'll just put the date in today, December 18th or whatever it is, and tomorrow 19th, and then I'll write one word, and those little sort of baby steps, so to speak. And the next thing you know, you're doing the whole thing.
Yeah, it's great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, David, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, thank you, Steve. There's several ways. The primary one is my website's thatgratitudeguy.com, and you can get the gratitude journal on there, and you can see different things. I've got my videos are on there and so forth. Also, I do a lot of coaching, so you can go to davidgeorgebrookecoaching.com, and that's where I give these 45-minute calls to see if I can help people, and give them a free call to kind of get a little bit of a gratitude on the spot coaching, so to speak. And then also I have a lot of videos. I have almost 2,000 videos on YouTube. And so if you go to YouTube, it's David George Brooke is my whatever you call it, handle.
Your channel.
Channel. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you can subscribe to that, and then you get the notification every time the new ones comes out. So, and then lastly, in the chat, there is a link for the gratitude journals if you want to go directly to Amazon and skip going to the website. And again, I just feel so strongly. And these journals, they last about 3 or 4 months, is about how long if you fill them out every day. So I've got behind me on my bookshelf, I've probably got about 70 or 80 of them, because I've been doing it for 10 or 12 years. And and that's another quick comment. Another bonus is what's really neat about it versus saying, I just think about it, or I just sort of, maybe write one word. You can go back to certain days in your life and see what you wrote. And it's just so instructive. It's just really, really cool to see what you did on that day.
It's inspirational.
Yes, absolutely.
It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our show. So many thanks to my great guest. I'm so grateful for David George Brooke, that gratitude guy.
Thank you.
I hope you learned something about a gratitude practice that you can incorporate into your life. I'll bet it will change you. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.